11 Investigates team uncovered details about a legal precedent for single parents that's so obscure, many lawyers aren't even aware of it. It's called contractual relinquishment. The idea that a single parent could lose partial custody of their child through their words, thoughts, or actions. Lead investigator Brian Duggar shares the story of one local woman caught up in this legal loophole.
Stephanie Highnight thought she was prepared for the most important decision of her life, whether to adopt two children she'd been fostering through Lucas County Children's Services.
I had to take more classes, do further background checks and home studies in order to adopt them. But I would say that I was prepared for that.
But she wasn't prepared for a legal fight. The partner was involved with Stephanie during part of the adoption process, but they broke up before the adoption was finalized. That person isn't on the final paperwork, but sued for joint custody of the two children.
I had never heard of it, and even my first attorneys had not heard of this before.
She's talking about contractual relinquishment, when a single parent gives up partial custody of a child through thoughts, words, or actions. Family attorney Paige Forwork says she's worked with a lot of single moms who aren't up to speed on this legal loophole.
In an extreme case, in theory, any person who has, taken care of your child or maybe done some amount of financial investment in them, in theory, could sue for custody.
So here's an extreme case out of Logan County. Brown versus Wyatt. A male employer sued an employee for shared custody of her child. The two were in an intimate relationship, and the employer argued his employee gave up partial custody of her child through words, thoughts, and actions. The employer didn't win, but the mother had to pay an attorney to defend herself in court. It means for defense attorney Andy Miley that anyone could potentially sue for custody of another person's child.
People who had short-term relationships, people who had medium or long-term relationships, or even we've seen cases where there was maybe the mother dated somebody for a week, a guy for a week, and then he sues the mother and says, I really grew close to your children for a week, and now the mother is stuck in that litigation.
Here's the genesis of every custody case involving contractual relinquishment. The 2002 ruling in Ray Bonfield, when two lesbians, years before gay marriage became law, sued to establish partial custody of their child. They didn't win that case, but the precedent was set. A single parent can have custody challenged by grandparents, siblings, aunts and uncles, employers, and even neighbors. Are you saying that the neighbor could then sue for custody of that kid?
The neighbor could sue for custody. Whether they would win or not, will be up to the court. The neighbor could say, look, I spent an hour every day with Jimmy for 5 years. So by that conduct, you've implicitly granted me access to Jimmy for 1 hour a day, indefinitely.
Meanwhile, Stephanie's legal battle across 5 different attorneys has already totaled more than $100,000.
I never expected it would be that much, but I think what the average person doesn't understand is an attorney bills for their time spent on a case, and the average attorney fee is $250 an hour, upwards of like $400 and $500 an hour.
The case began in 2021, and she recently received a ruling that was difficult to hear. The Lucas County Juvenile Court says she gave up partial custody of the two children she adopted. She had contractually relinquished partial custody. The case has been stayed, so she's getting her weekends back in the meantime.
I would do this 10,000 times over for my kids, but I would never have fostered when I was in an unmarried relationship, knowing that this could be potential effects.
As impossible as contractual relinquishment sounds, Miley says there have been hundreds of cases involving it. The legal fix? The General Assembly needs to make a change.
The legislature can simply pass a statute saying that no juvenile court has the power to grant custody to a non-parent.
Right now, education's the biggest hurdle. most parents wouldn't think it'd be possible to lose parental rights.
If you share your life or you share your child with another person, you're exposing yourself to a lawsuit.
For single parents, be very intentional with what you want a relationship to look like.
When you start dating somebody, have them sign a contract saying, well, I'm not going to agree to sue you for custody. Which, who wants to start off a relationship that way?
Now, 11 Investigates learned that people who are awarded partial custody of a juvenile in these cases can't be sued for child support, and that's one of the biggest issues, and why Stephanie and others in her shoes don't think it's fair that they have to share custody of their children. Now, we reached out to the attorney representing Stephanie's former partner, and our request for comment was declined. Reporting in the studio, this is Brian Duggar for 11 Investigates.